show of hands. Make a graph kind of like this with your hands and show me what your approximate level according to yourself in English is. What do you think your level is? Could you all please raise your hands and kind of show me? Is there? Okay. Okay, so kind of average from what I'm seeing. All right. I'll try to keep it slow and not speak too fast. Try to keep speaking loud. But you'll have to remind me because I keep forgetting. So at any time, if I'm speaking too fast, you can raise your hand, tell me, or make a gesture like this to tell me to slow down. This way I'll remember because I might forget. So hello to all. My name is Jacques Bardot. I'm your host for today. I'm going to be talking to you about all you ever wanted to know about Linux. Yeah, so let's get right to it. I got little rules for this presentation. So I explain like my ideas and my concepts with comparisons to other things. It's my way to easily get ideas across. So I'll be using that a lot. Yeah, just a little thing about this presentation. I want you all to participate. I'm going to be like asking you questions, asking you all to raise your hands to answer questions and things like that. And yeah, I want you to also have fun. This is more for a side kind of activity. No need to stress out about it. So yeah. All right. So today we'll be viewing what are the only 3 existing OS families. That was the only highlighted there. What's different about Windows and Linux OS? What are the common misconceptions about Linux? It's a big one. We're going to be covering lots of things. How do I choose and install my Linux distributions? And why should I? All right. So to start off, and here's where I'm going to start having you guys all communicate with me. Can you all tell me what the 3 existing OS families are? Yes?
Linux, Macintosh, and Windows.
Yes, very good. So we trace the origins to each of these systems to these dates, more or less. And some people in here might be like, yeah, Windows was the first. And that's because we're omitting Unix. We're not really counting it. It's part of the Linux family. So, but in that respect, we can consider that Windows was kind of first. There was the first versions, the preemptive versions of the Apple I and everything wasn't Mac back then, but same kind of story. It's the ancestor to the Mac, and in that case, the Apple I was one of the first personal computers. But it's kind of hard to trace in the case of OS. You gotta make abstract rules. So. What are the basis for each of these OSs? They all have an origin. Can you guys tell me what the origin for each of these systems are? I kind of gave you hints about one of these already. Several. Come on. No? Not all? All right. Well, for Windows, we have DOS as the origin. You probably heard that before. And for Linux, we have Unix, as for what I mentioned. These are the kind of ancestors that they evolved from. For Mac, it's a little bit of a different question. I like to think it as very different because it originated from Unix for most people. It's before that it was in its own kind of base, and it's evolved into a similar kind of OS in general as Linux because of the multiple updates and patches it's had over the years that mimicked all the changes that Linux has had from Unix. So yeah, this is the graphic family tree for Windows. I had a lot of fun finding and completing these graphics, making them. I like this tree very much. It's very simple. You'll see in different colors the different branches, starting basically in red with a DOS kind of base. And then the NT family started existing around 1992. And then they fused into XP. And then they were like, okay, XP wasn't such a great idea, let's go back to NT. And so from there on, we've only had the NT family in Windows. And it's been that all the way until today with Windows 10. Fun fact. And this is the Mac family, even simpler. You have one family branch, and it's been just evolutions of the same kind of OS over the years, going all the way today to El Capitan. I don't know that much about Mac, so generally I won't be covering that much all that much about it in this conference. And the Linux family tree is even simpler. It depends on your notion of simple. I'll just let you appreciate the grandeur. It stops right about there. Oh no, actually it keeps going. That is Slackware, if I'm not mistaken. Red Hat. And it keeps going. Yeah, there's Slackware. I hope you have a lot of time ahead of you. I'm kidding, I'm not going to be covering all that. That's Debian. With Ubuntu right there. Mint. Yeah. This is taken straight from Wikipedia. I like this ref a lot. So what happened there? Why are there so many different Linux branches? The very simple response to that is you can, every single one of you can create your own Linux branch. You can modify a simple interface, add a couple programs in there, decide which packages it's going to include from the start or not. Call it your own name if you want. It's going to be Jacques OS or whatever you want to call it. And well, if it's different enough, if it stands out enough, it's going to make it into the tree. And this is basically how we ended up having this many Linux branches. Of course, the whole story is kind of longer, but it explains why today there's so many. Of course, originally there was only Slackware, Red Hat, and Debian. All right. So yeah, I answered that. So yeah, moving on to the next part. We want to look at what's different between Windows and Linux. So I'm gonna use one of these famed comparisons I was mentioning. Do you guys all here know what Legos is? Show of hands. Show of hands. I don't know what Legos is. You? Okay. You all know Legos. So yeah, I'm gonna use Legos as a metaphor for representing for both Windows and Linux. If we were to look at an OS, we would represent perhaps Windows starting with basically the surface that you use in Lego to start to build on. And this would describe you could cut out different areas of it and say, well, okay, this over here is the kernel, this is the executive layer, and that would be your Windows. And basically everything you put on top is your programs and your drivers and your codecs and all that thing, all those kind of things. And it might look like it's been built by a 3-year-old. And Linux, which also looks like it's been built by a 3-year-old, would not have a base at all. It would be suspended in midair. And the difference here, it's quite important, is that you could, for example, take this little block that you have here, pop it off, and pop another one underneath. And say you have your Linux system up and running, and this block down here is the kernel, the bottommost block. You could just pop it right off and put another one on while the Linux is running. And this to the whole Windows universe is completely possible and mind-blowing. And yeah, so on top you'd have eventually your programs, your drivers, and etc. And the important thing to note is that all the ED blocks in Linux are kind of interlinked. They kind of share their different resources. And so they help each other out. There's less redundancy. And the really interesting factor is that you can absolutely remove and change anything in there. I'll delve more into that a little bit later on. So yeah, we're gonna start looking at the common exceptions for Linux. First one I want to talk about is, isn't Linux only for uber geeks? I get this a lot. You probably think this all yourself. How many of you probably think that Linux is like really hard to use? Show of hands. Yeah, okay. 2 people only? The rest of you are like, nah, this is easy. How many of you use Linux at home? All right, nice. Okay. Alright, so yeah, two of you think it's hard. All the rest of you think it's easy. Well, okay, that's a myth debunked then. I'll say. But yeah, over the years, Linux has gotten a lot easier to use. This is a modern Linux interface. This is Zorin. Some of you might know Zorin. Who knows Zorin? I do. Okay. So yeah, as you might tell, it looks a lot like Windows. You have your typical taskbar with the start menu, with the preview of the folders that are open and whatnot. There's a start menu that's open. There's this the settings. It looks something that anybody could figure out, and probably if you've only ever used Windows your whole life, you have no problem using, since it's very similar. And what I want to start to get into now is the software and usage differences that actually make Linux objectively easier sometimes to use than Windows. This is the Software Center. This is the correct way now to install applications on Linux. The one I recommend to use. You used to have to compile, and I'm not going to go into that at all because it wouldn't illustrate the matter. So yeah, you just have one application which you launch and in which you can search for the programs that you want to install. You can see you have VLC down here, and you have whatever program you might want to find. And the great thing with this is that all is combined into one app. That's one thing, but then you just click on which you want to install. It downloads it, installs it into the right directory, and it's done. It's there. It's ready to use. It's one button. Compare that to Windows, where you have to search on the internet on a browser for whatever application it is you want. You're not going to be going to the same sources to find the different programs. It's going to be different websites for each one with different processes, more or less adware. The difference, the different problems you can run into, which are individual. Yeah, there's a question? No? Okay. Which are individual to each program. So yeah, this is the software updater. It's not only does it update the software on your system, it updates the system itself. As I mentioned before, Linux is a collection of resources that are all working together, and basically the OS itself is part of that. And this means that there's a single button to update your system and every single app on there, as well as the drivers and all the things that you have on your system, which is pretty incredible when you compare it to having to run every individual updater on Windows, not to mention Windows System Updater. And you might notice that this is a window running on the desktop. Windows System Update is not a desktop application. It runs while you're rebooting. You might have all noticed before. How many people know what this is? Show of hands. All right, good. These are shortcut keys that you might learn over the course of your life. kind of subconsciously, these are not necessary on Linux. I've not had the use for it. This is extra things that you have to learn when you're using Windows. By the way, quick tip, if you are trying to open the task manager, the quicker way is to Control-Shift-Escape instead of Control-Alt-Delete, if you wanted to know. That opens up the task manager directly on Windows, and I think on Linux as well. So yeah, the impression is that you have to learn a lot of new things to learn Linux, and what's actually happening is that over the course of your life, you've been learning Windows, and you've been spending a lot of time learning Windows, and this is time not spent learning other systems, and it might seem to you like there's a whole lot more to learn, but all you're doing is basically starting back from zero. Imagine that you've completely forgotten how to use Windows, and you might experience this regularly. I don't know if you've ever helped out your grandma or your mother use a computer and they were completely incapable of using it. Well, this is what it's like to start learning from the top. And so yeah, this is only the reason why this has a tendency to come up. So you also have in Windows the problem with adware and having to know what you're doing. This is some of the stuff you can run into. I posted plenty of them, and they're all extremely tricky. Of course, they're trying to get you to install extra stuff, spyware, crapware, all this kind of stuff, and they're going to be extremely clever in how they do it. Some of these, like for example, you just have to, take the exact right boxes, and this is a whole learning process. Now you almost do this almost subconsciously, but or some of you may not. But this was something you had to learn to do. That's the point I'm trying to get across. This one's pretty hardcore. You just have to close the window to not to get the app. Windows itself does this. Here's a story. I had to tell one of my friends that I couldn't manage on Windows 8.1 to get non-Microsoft accounts and to just log in to start the use of my Windows 8.1. Because during the installation process, it asked for you to log in with a Microsoft account, and I was like, "There's no way to do it without." And he said, "Well, there is actually. You have to find like this little button right here. See this? And then you can click on this, and there you go. You can log in. You can create a Windows 8.1 installation without being forced to log into a Microsoft account." And so yeah, when it's the OS itself that's trying to trick you, it says a lot about the rest of the system. I mentioned the updates. Yeah, this is exaggerated, but and some of you before might have been like, well, fuck it, I really got to go to bed. I got a conference to do tomorrow. I don't have time for this stuff. And you like, this is after you reboot, it's still going. You shut it down. You forcefully shut it down, and then your Windows start having problems. All these stuff you don't have to run into with Linux. So that's what I'm trying to communicate here. Not really. It's not really as hard to use as Windows. In some aspects, it's actually much easier. All right. Here's another one I got. Won't installing Linux break my Windows? Has that thought ever occurred to you, people? Have people told you this? No? Right. Well, the answer in the same fashion is no. Let's take for example, like a children's drawing that's going to represent the world of Windows and the world of Linux. Let's say this one's Linux and this one's Windows. Right? So they're each in their own universe, and this is materialized by different partitioning systems. And I think this is the most fundamental, really, segmentation between the two. The fact that the file system itself is different, and if you don't know what a file system is, it's just the way in which the ones and zeros are arranged on your hard drive. There's different organization methods. And so there's a completely different organization method for Windows and for all Linux versions. Linux has a tendency to use XXT, EXT, sorry, and it's on the 4th version. And NTFS, if you didn't know, there's actually versions, but nobody ever talks about it. It's currently on version 3.1. And those are completely different file systems, and this means that they don't read the same at all. Windows, for example, is not capable of accessing an exe file system and reading it at all. And this will result in there not being the capability of the two interacting between the two. You're going to necessarily have to create a different partition, whether it be on a different hard drive or on the same hard drive but on a different partition. It's going to mean that you're not overwriting any Windows files with your Linux installation. All right. And of course, there is Linux. Almost all Linux have the capability to read NTFS and to edit these files. Well, I'd like to say that the way it's set up now with Windows 10, by default, the drive is put on Hibernate every time Windows shuts down, so this locks the file. There's no risk of files being modified unless you specifically make the modifications to enable that to happen. Alright, this is another one I get a lot. Nobody uses Linux anyways. Now this one makes me snicker. Do you guys get this or get this impression? How many of you think like Linux is very, very used? Show of hands. Okay, 2 people. And how many people think that Linux is like not used at all? Okay. Well, it will surprise you probably. I don't know. I don't know how many people I'm going to surprise with this, but let's just do this. No, not at all. Here's the different phone OSs. There are OSs on your phones, and as you can see, there's WebOS. WebOS is first. So there's different OSs used for the servers that you connect to. If you're going to go on YouTube or any websites, the computers that run over there and that host these websites are running on the different set of OSs. And as you can see, Linux is not too far off. There's 28% of the different servers out there that are running on Linux, 48% on Windows. So this is, okay. So this is just to off the bat change what preconceptions they might have been. It's more used than you might think, and I honestly pin the fact that there is more Linux-based kernels for web servers on the fact that the popularity of Linux is not well known enough, and anybody can make a website. Probably some of you already have. Who's already made a website here? Yeah. All right. Now this is the cell phone usage, and as you can see up there, there's Android. Android is actually a Linux distribution, and you might say, well, Android, Linux, two completely different things. There's videos on YouTube of people downloading the packages necessary on their Android distribution and basically transforming it, bit by bit into a Linux distribution. You can even download the kernel necessary to run on the right CPU, and then just take out if the Android was installed on a hard drive, put it into a PC with the next CPU, and move your way up, and you can just upgrade it straight up to a full Linux distribution. So it's this is what I meant with the Lego block switching out. This means that Android is Linux and vice versa. So yeah, if you have an Android phone, and who here has an Android phone? Probably more, but yeah. All right, and so yeah, you've been using Linux without knowing it. Who here didn't know this? No, everybody knew that. Oh, you knew. Okay, all right. So, and people might say, well, what about the powerful computers, like the really beefy ones? And well, this is where it gets even more stereotypical. You have at the start of an age like where we started to have big computers and everything. It was almost exclusively Unix, and Linux is in green there, and you can see now it's basically almost 100%. And yeah, the reason why we want to run Linux on really beefy computers that run night and day, 24/7, is because we want them to never crash. We want to have them always available for computing time. It's more stable. It's better for computing capabilities. It's just all around more. It's more adaptable. You have a crazy number of cores of memory on these machines, and Linux is incredibly scalable in that regard, since you can just change out the blocks where it says that it's expecting this kind of CPU or this kind of memory. So yeah. You can also cite the example of satellites in orbit. They don't use Windows on satellites in orbit. Definitely not. They use Linux or simplified versions of Unix for the most part. That's because when you send, $50 billion rocket into space, you don't want the moment that it gets there to get a blue screen, and then you have a project that you wasted for. That'd be a bit of a shame. And yeah, most of the satellites that we have up there have like a 3 to 5 year life expectancy, and most of them live to be 7 years old, 8 years old. We have satellites up there that are still running, and they were launched like 7 years ago. And they're providing us with our cellular service and stuff like that. So they far outlived their job. As a last little job, something that's more representative to something that you might know. This is the graph of different desktop OS utilization, and so this is desktop OS is the OS that you're going to be using, you and me. And you can see Linux is way down there, it's 1.5%, not much. So yeah. So yeah, this one is one that's that I like. I mean, it's kind of funny. You might be thinking, well, when somebody tells you that Linux is more secure of a system, the argument that comes up is that as a counter argument is that Linux has viruses too. And while this statement is true, it's not exactly true. There are actually not a similar proportion of viruses, and this is something that's very important. I think that you will never in your life encounter the type of virus that can actually infect a Linux computer. Those are the kind of things that probably are developed by governments that can run on any machine. So yeah, oops, well, I wrote that, but you know that. What are the different extension files for programs on the different systems? You guys know this? Who knows for Mac, for example? Anybody?
.dmg.
That's right. Now for Linux, who else? Nobody know?
sh.
SH. There's SH, there's LS, and there's nothing. Nothing is the most common one. So yeah. And okay, so I think, well, different extension, whatever. You can just change the extension, and that's not the case either. Here's a program that's the same program but compiled, for different OSs. So you can see little differences here and there, and what this will mean will be like a complete breakdown of the program if you're trying to run the same bit of code on a different environment that's expecting very specific sets of instructions. You can't just cheat your way into this. So to put this into perspective, let's say like you have a virus, a very, very cute virus, all right? This virus likes to live on Earth, and all of a sudden you put it on Mars. This virus has no air to breathe. It can't survive. That's basically the equivalent of putting your typical virus, your exe, on Linux. Nothing will happen. It can't execute itself and everything. There's also, by comparison, your problems with relating to firewall on Windows and everything. Yeah, I like to not delve too much into this. The basic idea is when you're looking at if Linux is as virus infected as Windows, it's really not, and that's kind of the point. It is much more secure. All right, and this one is probably one of the best ones. There are no native video games on Linux. So we're gonna do a little game where you all participate here. Yeah. This is a list that I compiled with trick entries. These are, out of this list, you gotta find the ones that run on Linux. There are 10 entries out of this list, and these 10 games run on Linux. Can you guys figure out which ones? If you guys can't see, you can come closer. Show of hands.
Project Cars, maybe.
Yeah, good one. All right, who else? Was he?
Team Fortress.
Team Fortress. Yes, it does actually run on Linux. Who else? Nobody? Come on. Right. Are you giving your tongue to the cat? You give up? Alright. I lied. All these are on Linux. All these games. And these are what I consider the... Sorry. And these are the list of what I consider AAA titles. I have a list for indie and for games that are to come out. Same deal. They're all on Linux. You probably know some of these. Those are pretty good games. Tomb Raider. Oh, I mean, that's a good one. Witcher 2. I have that one. I like that one. Chivalry. Yeah. XCOM 2. Big titles. These are the indie titles. And same thing. Every single one of these is on Linux. And I just picked out the most popular ones, Oh, I didn't leave that long enough, did I? Hold on. You guys tell me when you're done. Yeah?
What about the price of games?
It's the same price. Like this is most of these are actually all. Most of these are games that are available on Steam. You know Steam?
Yes.
Steam is a native app on Linux. You know the guy who runs Steam? No? Gabe Newell. Gabe Newell? You never heard of Gabe Newell? Okay. Gabe Newell is a big Linux fan. He's been developing what you call SteamOS and the Steambox, which is a game console which runs on Linux, and he's been converting as much of his library into Linux as he can. So this means that you can just run these games. You just install Steam, and you have a Steam account, and you download your game. That's it, just like you would on Windows. So yeah, Subnautica Cluster Truck. That's a recent one. It just came out. Actually, it's in beta. Right, and this is the games to come out. They're like more or less a big deal. Saints Row 3 already came out, but it hadn't been compiled yet into Linux. It's gonna be done. It's gonna take a little while. Evolve, same deal. They plan to release it for Linux. And what else do we have? Street Fighter 5. That's a big one. Mad Max. Star Citizen, everybody knows. Everybody knows it's going to come out on Linux. But yeah. Right. So yeah, that gives you the basic idea. There are 1,500, so that's 1,500 games that you can install on Linux natively. That means you just do it the same way you would on Windows. It's the same download, and this is just for Steam. That's not counting the games that are not on Steam. I didn't check. There were probably a bunch more. So yeah, that gives you a basic idea, and you saw in there that if the argument after that was that it's not the big titles, well you saw there's a lot of big titles in there. So yeah, so now brings us to how do I choose and install my Linux distribution. You probably saw the graph at the beginning. You're like, well, how do I tackle this? This is crazy. There's just too many. I can't do this kind of stuff, and I couldn't either, to be honest. So just relax, take it easy. There's always a starting point. You gotta find what's important to you, and take it from recommendations from other people. That's the way it's done. Then people always want to take the best distro, and that's the key term. That's really the problem here, is that there really is no best. There's like specializations in between the different Linux distributions, and every person will have an opinion on which one is the best one, and it really depends on what you want. If maximum simplicity is what's best to you, then I'd say Zorin. If maximum compatibility with all the drivers, all your printers and scanners. I'm sure you've heard plenty of tales of how it was really difficult to get printers and scanners to work on Linux. Yeah, I figured out how to get mine working. It took a bit of fiddling, but nowadays it works a lot better. And Ubuntu is great for this. It has a lot more compatibility. If you want something that's kind of in between the two, Mint is great. If you want something that's like Mac, but not having to pay, Elementary. And if you want something that's like for music, Ubuntu Studio. And the lightweight one is going to be Ubuntu. There's several others. I think Ubuntu is like one of the lightest ones. It really runs on very, very small netbooks and tablets, and runs very, very zippy. So this is kind of like the things you want to look for. I'm going to let you guys take notes since you guys are taking notes. And while I'm at it, if you guys still have questions, you don't hesitate. All right? All right. Okay. So if I were to install Linux, how would I go about it? It's most of the time it's going to be on the website of said distribution. Each one of them has a website, obviously. For example, this is Ubuntu's website. You can see my whole presentation was Ubuntu themes. And yeah, you just go to the website, go and download. There's also a website called distrowatch.org, and you can just look at all the different distros there is and download them there. And then you can once you have the ISO file, you're just gonna use a program like this one. This one's called Universal USB Installer. You just put a USB drive. It's gotta be 4 gigs or bigger into your computer, and it's gonna format this USB drive and put the image on top. And once you've done that, you can reboot to the USB drive. You can already start using Linux, because at that point it's already a running Linux that you can boot on from the USB key, which is pretty powerful. For Windows, there still isn't a method to do something equivalent. You can buy a USB key that has special components inside for some reason that allow you to boot Windows from a USB key, and I think it's because of the license. But yeah. So yeah, once you've done that, you can just either start using it from the USB key. Yes.
Could you explain about the USB installer? I didn't get anything.
Okay, thank you for saying so, because I have no idea if you all understand. Okay, so what happens is, like, say you're on Windows and you wanna get Linux installed on your computer or on somebody else's or whatever. You are going to go to a website, get the ISO file, .iso, and then you get a program. Like, you could just extract for most times. Like, for example, for Ubuntu, if you get the beta version, you can just extract the ISO straight onto the USB drive. It's got to be formatted to FAT32, and that'll work. But the simplest way, because if you don't want to get into technicalities, basically have someone do it for you. And that program is what that someone is. It's a program that prepares your USB key to be a bootable Linux that can install Linux. So it has this dual purpose. Your USB key, you can just use it as Linux. Problem is, you can't install all the programs on it. It's limited space, and also there's technicalities that means that certain programs won't work on the USB key. But you can already start using it as a working OS that you can carry around. And then you can install from that USB key.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All you need to do is, once you have the USB key that's made by this program, and it has a step-by-step guide, it's pretty easy. You just tell it what distribution you want, where the ISO is. It finds it itself. If it's in downloads, it finds it automatically. And then you just, it finds the USB drive automatically because it rules out hard drives, and all that's left is the USB drive. So it finds the USB drive automatically, and then you just tell it, create. That's it. And once that's done, you just reboots and try to start on the USB key. Now that's the tricky part. But there's plenty of YouTube tutorials and such to explain how to do that. All right. And the big question now is, why would I want to do that? And I may have already touched on some of the points in the presentation, but I'm just gonna try to answer the question even further. There's less hassle, in my opinion. There's the if you're not a power user, and nowadays if you want to be using Windows well, I feel you need to be a power user. You need to know what you're doing, especially with all of the rampant adware that's on there. In terms of getting your system clean, updated, this is definitely a point. Then there's the fact, no adware, no malware, no Trojanware, phishing, worm, CryptoLocker, viruses. Hacking is going to be harder on a Windows computer now. Not your everyday person is subject to hacking. In fact, I'm going to be honest with you and tell you that you probably not in your entire life will be a victim of hacking. It's very rare. It's actually a harder system to hack, much harder than Windows. You all know what all these different malware are. You guys know what? Show of hands. Who knows what a CryptoLocker is? Yeah. Okay. Can you explain?
It's when someone is scripting your files and asks you some bitcoins, for example.
Yeah.
To know them.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That explains the entire principle, and it's this kind of thing that you won't run into with Linux. It's a lot of hassle off in mind. So so the prejudice the ideas, the preconception that are received about Linux, most of them are false. The idea that you can't use your typical software. I touched on video games because that's kind of the subject that's dear to you, but of course there's a bunch of other software, and a lot of the software might be more important. Professional software is not a side on which I find that Linux is as performant, and I'll be honest with you guys, I use Windows and Linux simultaneously. I emulate my Windows, but I still need Windows for Photoshop. I like Photoshop a lot. I like Microsoft Office a lot. And so the situation with professional software, I'll call them that, hasn't progressed as well. But I think it's at a point where it's going forward. They made a build of Microsoft Office for Android, which is bringing it nearer, ever nearer to getting a build for Linux. So it's probably likely to happen. As for say the alternatives to Adobe and everything. They are more and more presenting themselves. The typical GIMP will likely be superseded by a better option. But for now, I like to emulate them. Right. But most of the typical activities, like if you're just a web browser kind of guy, trying to get your work done, and most of the time, OpenOffice and these kind of things will be more than enough for you, or just working on Drive, online applications are more and more popular these days, and this is why it's becoming less and less of a problem. And the final, one of the main reasons is that it's free, and it seems almost insane sometimes that things that could be better at the same time could be free. That's just the way it is. It was licensed this way. People contributed, and you could say they were suckered into contributing for not getting any money in return, but maybe they were just happy that they had something that they could use every day, and they weren't the only people who were contributing. Other people were contributing, and it was helping them out. It's a question of community, and it's what brings it to be an OS's quality. And we don't want to be encouraging a monopoly. If we've seen in the past what can happen with these sort of things. And actually, it's sad to say that it's not really stopped us from creating monopolies with lots of different companies. You know, you can think of Google, you can think of McDonald's, you can think of a bunch of companies that have taken the upper hand and that are now making us reap the consequences of that. So a good example of this going on right now is that there's actually a debate. I don't know if it's still going or if it's over on what OS should be used in the public school system. There was recently a contract signed by the French government with Microsoft, pledging that they would put Microsoft license on Windows, and of course the Linux community arose and said there was never a debate and there was never a fair exchange. We didn't get a chance to propose something. Yeah, this is the kind of situation that can arise. If some of you might have had in class already Linux distributions on some of your computers, you haven't seen that. I've seen that at Mirai. They have that on some of their computers, the library computers. There's some other places, but no, none of you. Yeah.
No, just a question.
Yeah.
Do you think that in the future we will have Linux on computers that we will buy in La Fnac or Boulanger?
Actually, it's already the case. That's already the case. If you haven't gone there recently, you missed it because it's already the case. There's like always one or two. There's not that many, but it's already the case. For example, the computers that we just got installed it's in the informatics sector. They came pre-installed with Ubuntu. They changed what was installed on there, but that was what was already installed. They didn't have Windows. And you'll see that online, it's actually a thriving business. There's lots of cases where that happens. Have you guys heard of a Chromebook? Yeah, it's Chrome. It's running Chrome OS, which is just a small variation of Mint, which is Linux. There's many other examples of this, but there's several partnerships that Ubuntu has with different producers, HP being one of them, and they've been producing lots of laptops with. It already exists. So yeah, and who else? I missed somebody. No? Okay. Right. Well, thank you all for your time. I welcome you all for coming today. And yeah, if you have any questions, any things that you wanted to ask, please feel free. Yes?
Is it possible to have on the same computer Windows and two license of Linux?
Yeah. Actually, the license term is not something you really want to use. There's no licenses; they're free, so you can have a million. You can have it as many as you want. And the fun thing is that there's also a multi-boots USB key program, like the one that I showed. That was for creating one image on the USB key. But recently, for a friend of mine, I gave another program that allowed you to install several OSs on there. And this is something that you can do. You can have one USB key with 18 different Linux on it, and you can try all the different one after the other, and you can also install as many as you want, given that you have enough drive space. But the typical Linux installation takes 5 gigabytes to install. I mean, I'm counting for all the extra programs you might need to install and everything, 5 gigabytes. And if you want to be large, 20 gigabytes, and that's probably the maximum you'll need. Whereas full installation of Windows 7 when it's completely updated is 25 gigabytes. That's off the bat, and then the programs you install on top is more.
And instead of USB key, can we use auxiliary hard disk?
Yeah, you can use that. I haven't done it before, but I think it's totally possible. The fun thing is basically you can use any external media. You can use floppy drive if you wanted to. I discovered the way I discovered Linux, and it's funny. I wasn't born into it or anything. I was already 17, 16, and I had broken down my Windows, and one of my dad's neighbors came over and everything, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I can fix it for you." And he had a CD, an Ubuntu CD, and he just popped that into the tray and booted onto the CD. You can boot from a CD. It's quite incredible. I didn't know you could do that before, and so yeah, you can boot from basically any external media. The simplest, because there's applications that basically do it for you, is of course the USB key. But if you want to do it on an external hard drive, I think you can tick the box on the same application let me just go back. And here we are. No, what was that? Yeah, it was after actually. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. See this tick box right here? You untick that box, and then it shows all your hard drives. And since so by default, does your external hard drive show as a USB key or not? Does it show as a hard drive or a USB key? Then you don't need to tick that box. It'll show right there. You can do it right there.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there a Linux distribution especially made for graphics designer?
That's a good one. Perhaps. You saw the tree. There were so many that there has to be one. I'm not aware of it. But there must be.
Is it possible to, like, if you have Windows and Linux installed in dual boot, to create a third partition when you have command files to the...
That's actually something that I do, yeah. The thing is, the common partition is generally something you want to choose something that Windows can read, FAT or NTFS. Generally I use NTFS. I tried, other third-party software to get Windows to read X partition, and right now they're not working that great. Perhaps because they were made for X3, and now that we're on X4, they no longer have any programs that can read those kind of a partition type. So use NTFS, and yes, you can share any files that way. I use GIMP. GIMP actually opens up PSD files, and I've edited the same file in GIMP and in Photoshop in both OSs separately, and it worked fine. Any other questions? Yeah?
And if I have only one partition on my disk,
Yeah.
the installation will install himself the partition?
That's kind of what it does actually. You have an option on Ubuntu, that's what I know, but on the other OS perhaps as well. What it does is that it notices that there's no free space, and it's gonna give you a little graph with a slider which you can basically move to say, well, I wanna give 20 gigabytes to Linux, and it's gonna take that from the free space because the slider is gonna lock to wherever you have files written on your hard drive. So if you have, like this is my picture of my dog, and this is where all the rest of the files on my computer start on my Windows computer, I can't go any further than that. And the rest is free space. It's like 000, there's nothing written, so you can write on that. And this, it can change into X4. It can change into the X4 partition. It'll let you move the slider and choose how much you want to give it. It's pretty simple, actually. The installation process is really straightforward. Back in the day when I was running Millennium and XP, I would reinstall my OS often, and I got to compare the difference between the installation process, which is graphical, with a mouse and a keyboard on Ubuntu, and back then XP and Millennium, it was a blue screen on which you installed your computer with text. It was with only the keyboard. It was kind of hard. Any other questions? All right. Well, you're free to go and have a good meal.